Saturday night to everybody. We're going to talk a little bit about my favorite team, the New York Football Giants. Well, what do you say when you have a team that is failing so spectacularly in a way that I just couldn't imagine at the beginning of the season? All right, so Tommy DeVito in the previous game got levitated by, I think, Anton Bea from the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. He levitated the guy. If any of you guys want to go back and take a good long look at it, he comes up the middle. He hits him so hard that Tommy DeVito's feet are just straight out like this, as the guy looks like he has him at least 4.5, 5 feet in the air and just lands on him all 300 pounds as he's the nose tackle. So I think that was like the deciding factor to bring in lame ass Drew Lock. And in all reality, if Drew Lock doesn't fumble in this game and lay there while they're grabbing the ball and he's holding his hand like this and he's just looking at his hand, I'm like, are you kidding me right now? We paid you $5 million. We gave Daniel Jones $40 million a year, and then you go and you let Saquon and Xavier McKinney go and take away from some of the other needs you could have had in this year's program to try to get better. All right, so, I guess a lot of people are going to say that listen to my show or watch my show, get over it and get over crying about spilled milk. I'm not going to get over Saquon. I'm not going to get over the stupidity of letting Saquon go. And I'm not going to get over the real data point that every move that you're trying to make, every game that you say you're trying to win, you've just diminished your ability to do it by getting away these two key people. In the, I believe, Sunday night game when Green Bay played, they showed a stat with Xavier McKinney on the screen, showing him getting his 8th interception. The guy, if he hasn't been called the NFL Defensive Player of the Week last week, maybe it'll be this week or maybe the upcoming week. This compounds a bad decision-making process. I personally, as a Giants fan, as a fan of the NFL, as a guy that tries to approach things in a logical manner, I have no reason to believe that getting Cam Ward will be beneficial to the Giants if Joe Shane and Brian Daboll are still there, especially Joe Shane. Like I said before, if I had to choose between one or the other, I am taking Daboll's over Shane. But I really don't want either one of them, to be quite honest with you. And when you go into the Google feed and you look at what pops up in the Google feed, because I'm heavy looking at Giants, Google's going to give you, along with your normal regular stories that are taking place, there's always a story in here about, what's going on with the New York Giants. Over the last 4 or 5 days, I've been seeing nothing but stories that are saying, should the Giants keep Brian Daboll and Joe Shane? Some of the headlines for YouTube pages say, fire Joe Shane immediately. And if you want to see a great TikTok or Instagram video, over and over again, over the last 4 or 5 weeks, you see more and more excerpts from the Hard Knocks with the New York Giants, where he's sitting there all smug in his effing chair talking about, oh yeah, how do I need a $12 million quarterback a $40 million quarterback to hand off to a $12 million running back? Yeah, you fucking dummy, you need them both. You don't need to pay that guy $40 million. You need to take care of all your other guys that are doing the job for you. And I'm sitting here over these last 2 or 3 weeks, and I'm looking at how many times and different players that are still remaining on rosters. These people are finding ways with an expanded salary cap to keep players that are really good and they are big leaders on the team. I read an article about Xavier McKinney on Google going back 3.5, 4 weeks ago, where the writer said that he was interviewing one of the coaches for the Giants and talking about how much they miss Xavier McKinney. And the coach said, this guy is an alpha's alpha. And you fucking let that guy go? You turn around with your dumb pencil pushing ass and do this shit to us? So I have zero fucking faith that your dumb ass is going to do anything of any consequence. And the only thing that would save you is just the excellence of the players. But we need to have excellence from top to bottom in the organization. We need to have coaches that can coach. We need to have a very good plan on how you put the offense on the field. And I keep saying to everyone that's a New York Giants fan, analyze now. Go back and start with the very first game and look at how Daniel Jones was in the pocket. How many times he had to do a 5-step drop? How many times were there just one back behind him? How many times there was a tight end used? All these different points show you somebody that doesn't know what the fuck they're doing. And then to turn around and find out that Brian Daboll was the one of the tight end coaches for the Patriots when Brady and Gronk were there. Speaking of Brady, Brady says, hey, if I'm Daniel Jones, I'm not quitting on my team because the coaching staff quit on me. I'm getting paid. I'm going to be there, and I'm going to get in the coach's face and say, hey, look, I know you guys don't want me. I know next year I'm going to be gone. But you know what I want to do? I want to help Drew Lock. I want to help Tommy DeVito in any way that I can. And by being on the sideline and pointing some things out, you know, some guys, they reach an apex on what it is they can do. But those are the guys that end up coaching. There's a number of guys that are offensive coordinators that all played college quarterback or even some NFL quarterback, but they just weren't good enough to be at that elite level to maintain teams in a winning program. But they have a lot of knowledge, and you can utilize that knowledge. So I was listening to what Brady was saying, and, you know, there were people that were disagreeing with it in the conversation because it got brought up on, I believe it was Thursday Night Football with Rodney Harrison, or it was on Sunday Night Football last week. I believe it was over Thursday night, and they were questioning what if this was a good idea or something that could have been done. And certainly there was a lot of players on the team that liked Daniel Jones, because Daniel Jones is a very likable guy. You know, in terms of he seems like he's a very humble dude that's trying to work hard and do the right thing. He just, you know, you might reach the ceiling of what it is that you can do. And that's what it seems like. It'll be interesting to see how this goes forward, because the word on the street is that no matter how good Sam Darnold is for Minnesota, they're talking about letting Sam Darnold go as a free agent. You know, I think it was a minor miracle that they pulled this off. I think they would have to readjust themselves if Sam Darnold puts them deep into the playoffs or even the Super Bowl. You might have to reconsider your position. Because, no matter what Aaron Rodgers says after all these years, Aaron Rodgers being stuck behind Brett Favre was the best thing for his career in terms of getting a better understanding of what was expected once you got on the field. And Lord knows, it's like a pressure valve. 1 year you're sitting behind him. 2 years you're sitting behind him. I think it was about 3 years he was sitting behind Favre. And then they let Favre go, and I think even if I remember correctly, they let Favre go, and then they elevated Rodgers. This might be a good thing for the kid they got over there. I think it was J.J. McCarthy. So I'm still hoping that the Giants Brain Trust will really do a hard target search now for a replacement GM and a replacement head coach. And if we maintain our losing ways, you know, I would love to see the choice be for Cam Ward. You know, we have not had a quarterback coming from one of those top flight, pro style, Division I schools really ever. And if we had him, we had him after the fact as a backup or for a short period of time. Getting a guy fresh, I just would like to see a real change in the coaching staff and a very aggressive guy for defense. Is why I like Wink Martindale. I would like to get a guy like that. And this is why I keep saying that the knowledge that I have read about in terms of what Louis Riddick knows and what I've actually seen Brian Flores do and the stories I heard about Brian Flores. Speaking of which, Fitzpatrick, like he was a guy that was in the league for a very long time, and he was talking about Brian Flores going off on him and hitting him with a fine for being 0.8 pounds over what his weight was supposed to be. And that's something that, you know, those are like one of those little inside stories that we don't think about as fans and people watching it, that these guys are under a lot of pressure outside of being on the field and expecting to perform. So it was an interesting little story, and I just think that we need a certain level of old school toughness mixed with a new school level of how you deal with the players. And I think they both can coexist. You don't have to have one and not have the other. This was the failure of Joe Judge. Speaking of which, Mike Francesa, for people that live in the New York area, is a very well-known sports commentator. He's been around for a very long time. He was part of the Mike and the Mad Dog program back in the day that was all heard really nationwide, but definitely on the East Coast. And he was talking, and I saw in my feed a show that he did from 7 fucking years ago. And the Giants got beat by somebody, 51-17. I got to look back to see who it was. The most likeliest culprit is the fucking Cowboys that I'm sick of. And it just shows you, if that was 7 years ago, who was that? Was that Schumer? Was that McAdoo? Because McAdoo took it to a playoff, and then the next year he went 0-8. We need to have a complete and utter reset from top to bottom. You thought you were doing it before by getting some of the nepotism out and getting some of the Mara and Tish guys who are family members who might be on the staff in some area. Now we need to completely clean house, start from the bottom, and get some aggressive, hard-nosed people. And also, the New York Giant history is extremely important. The type of team that has been really a part of the Giants thing. Would I like to see a guy come in and be able to pass 300 yards and a defense that completely shut people down? That's the most ideal of circumstances. But the Giants' history has been that of short yardage plays, heavy usage of tight ends, fullbacks, misdirection plays, and a defense that's very stout and kicks ass. And I'd be very satisfied with that and have seasons like some of what the Cowboys has enjoyed, 12-4, and now it's 12-5, seasons. And we are overdue for some level of consistency. And we're not going to get it with this fucking clown show that we got here. We have to make some really serious determination. And again, my 1B, I don't know what's going to happen with Belichick. Sometimes, people get to a certain point and they move on. I feel like the guy would be better served as a GM with a more rear echelon thing, but with such football knowledge that when you start making choices about players, this guy can find out those intangibles and look into how a player is. And that would be an excellent person for a GM. Louis Riddick is my first pick. Bill Belichick would be my second pick. I imagine there's some other people out there that, I'm unaware of, but that would be very good in an upstart position. I like the idea of having guys who formerly played, and we're seeing kind of a transition that's happening with some coaches. D'Amico Ryans is doing a really good job. You got Raheem Morris. He's doing a really good job. So I would like to see some level of intensity going in. So the good part about my picks is that I've already watched the Giants lose and lose pathetically. And now I can get on with just enjoying the football weekend that's coming up. And it's going to be a limited amount of games since we had 3 games on Thanksgiving. The other thing I want to say is that there's a number of people, including the great Shannon Sharp and Ocho Cinco, that are talking about the Kansas City game with the Raiders. And is the NFL fixed? And I have to be honest with you. I think that just about everything, especially that's in America, in some way or another, as they used to say in New York, somebody's got their finger on the fucking scale. That's when you go to the deli and you get a pound of a roast beef, and then the guy's got his finger on the scale, but you really got 3/4 of a pound. Everything about American life is that way, and I would not expect sports to be that different. Do I think it's something that is completely happening in the system? No, I don't. But I do believe that there are some interesting little stats that the Vegas has for certain referees that are on the field for the NFL and for the NBA, especially. Calls that are questionable calls. I've heard a lot of guys that have played in the NFL and have commentary after their career's over. He said you could call a fucking holding call on every fucking play. So I think that there's, right now, KC is America's prima donnas. They are what the New England Patriots were. And my goal is to root for anybody else to be there than to see and put up for a three-peat with KC. I just don't want to see it. And I think that most people do not want to see it. So, is certain things questionable and calls questionable? Yes. I think there's some things that happen that nobody can predict to occur, like a crazy one-handed catch. And some of the throws that are done are just dropped on a dime from 60 yards away, and a guy catches it in double and triple coverage. There's certain runs that happen because there's no way you can script Saquon Barkley doing a spin move and then coming out of the spin move backwards and leaping, and his feet are the way to fuck up here 5 feet in the fucking air and leap backwards over somebody. So there's intangibles in coaching. We've got like 7 guys that are on the coaching hit list. One just went down in Chicago with Matt Eberflus, and the horrible way in which he did the last clock management. I'll be surprised, to be honest with you, if what's his name, Todd Davis, whoever runs the Raiders now, Al's son. I'll be surprised if Antonio Pierce is kept as the head coach. I like to see him be kept as a head coach. As a former Giant player, a captain, won the Super Bowl for us in 2007. His part was indispensable. He was showing up on Saturdays, breaking down game tape throughout the season, and then hipping everybody because he was a captain back there. And you could draw that line from Antonio Pierce to a guy like Xavier McKinney. You got to keep these balling guys there. You got to find every type of way, even if you got to backload their contracts and whatnot, to keep them on the team so that you can keep this core group of people so you can have a certain level of success. And I feel like, Joe Shane, you get like an F fucking minus. You get a 0, for the decision-making process that you have. And the players that you have picked, that was a group of people advising you and talking to you. So I'm not even going to give you all the credit for the people that we got who happen to be doing well. And what's in a man's heart and how well they will play or how hard they play, you can never predict. You can take people from top flight programs and they don't do very well. And for a lot of you, you can remember the Ohio State pick we have for running back, the great Ron Dane, and what he did in Ohio State in the Big Ten. Amazing. This guy was running all over people like crazy. Oh, excuse me for a moment. I got a black tie in here. Cheers to everybody. Post Thanksgiving and going into the holidays, I wish the very best for everybody and their family. Getting back to it, Ron Dane could not get anything going, and it was a real sad affair to watch this guy that looked like he was going to truck over everybody. And then when he got to the NFL, they were just waiting on him. They would just trip this guy on the ground, and it was over with. Salute. But getting back to what's happening right now, yeah, let's check some boxes here on what's going to happen going forward, especially going into the playoffs. And I have to tell you that I would love to see Lamar Jackson there, even though the Ravens have a Super Bowl win over the Giants that I'm still upset about after all these years. That was in 2000. But Lamar Jackson as a player and the way that they coach, I have to say that it was a very interesting thing watching Jim and John go against each other uh, and to see how Jim's decision-making process and the staff, I mean, John's decision-making process and the staff, and of course, the way the players are utilized, they just didn't have something for them, and I am constantly talking about tight ends because when you look at all these programs, I mean, you have a basic set of facts that you have to have in order to have a successful team. And of course, you always hear it all the time, you got to be good in all phases of the game, which is special teams, defense, offense. To see these teams that are so successful by using their tight end, and now the word on the street is that Theo Johnson is hurt, and so is Sexy Dexy. So we'll see who is the backup for Sexy Dexy. I'm not quite sure who that is. But what I want to see is I hope in God and pray that Daniel Bellinger comes out there and burns it up where they won't be able to deny it. And maybe might consider moving the ball around a little bit. Move the pocket away from the pressure. Right now, because you're such a laughing stock, any defenses that face the Giants going forward and for these final games, all they're going to do is pin their ears back and try to rip their fucking heads off. But that gives you an opportunity to change your configurations, change your play calling, set up these screens which will be not just running back screens, but also for the fucking tight end. And don't wait all the way to the third fucking quarter to do it. It's ridiculous. So this is basically it. I just wanted to touch base with everybody here on a Saturday night before the Sunday games go. We're 2-10. We're number one for who I hope will be the pick is Cam Ward. But John Mara has some work to do, and his upper executives have some work to do. Mr. Tisch, you need to get in there, have a conversation about what the fuck you're going to do going forward. And do you want to keep these two clowns that completely burned the fucking team? And then you have to add that to the totality of all your decision-making process. Now you could add Gettleman as a bum. You got freaking Schumer. You got now Joe Shane. You got Joe Judge. You got Brian Daboll. You got McAdoo. All crap. Let's clean it out from top to bottom and set up a program that's more designed for a long-term situation. And again, when you look at these other teams, they can take different parts out and let certain guys go that may cost them too much money. But their work in finding somebody to replace them is amazing. So, you got a guy that's a badass guy that was the wide receiver on the Ravens, and then you find this guy, Zay Flowers. And he's made some mistakes. I watched him make a horrible mistake at the end of last year or one earlier this year. I think it was last year in the playoff that he just did something that was crazy. But you can coach these guys up and get them to where they need to be. You got to have these main players. And of course, my final thing is that I hope and pray that you can make this fundamental change, get a good quarterback with Cam Ward, get the winning going again, get some consistency going where the Giants are a true threat to the NFC East. And by the fucking way, all roads for the Giants lead through Dallas and Philly. When two teams that are in your division can go to the fucking calendar in April and mark it as a win, you need to change every fucking thing about your fucking team. I'm so sick of Dallas beating the Giants that I just said this is like the perfect moment for the Giants to raise up and do something. They're going to put Drew Lock in. We're going to see what he's made out of. Shit show. Shit show on play calling. Shit show on performance. And you still were in the game. A 27-20 loss. And you can say that about 4 or 5 other games on the schedule, which will put you in contention possibly for a wild card this year if you had to make the fucking dumbass decisions you made. I had a little edit there. It's time for the Giants to get off their fucking asses and fucking put together a program that makes us do to Dallas what they've been doing to us for the last 5, 6, 7 fucking years. And that's to put our foot in their fucking asses. I'm sick of this shit. I'm sick of seeing it. And the Dallas games in the schedule are always closer together. We always have to play them as the first fucking game, and now all of a sudden we're on this Thanksgiving bullshit run. I'm sick of Dallas Cowboys beating the Giants. Wake the fuck up, Mara and Mr. Tish. Get your shit together. Get these sons of bitches out of there and put together a long-term program with solid, rock-solid people. I don't know why everyone else has it, but we don't. It almost seems as if the moments that we have had with Eli, with Coach Coughlin, with Newsom as our GM were accidents. You're supposed to build on something each year, but every year you fucking fail. And it might be time for the Maras and the Tishes to sell the team to somebody that can do it. Because maybe the reason why we failed so much was because of you. Have a nice fucking day. Let's go New York Football Giants.